بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين Testing. Testing.
السلام عليكم شيخ.
وعليكم السلام. كيف حالكم؟ How's it going أخي؟ خير 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 الحمد لله. ها؟
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Salam. How you been, man? Alhamdulillah. How's kids and family? La, subhanallah. It was years ago, it still is. How's Abdurrahim? You talked to him?
No, I ain't talked to him in a while, man.
He moved?
He's in Georgia, yeah.
Ah.
He's in
I remember he said he was going to go.
Yeah, he been there.
Kev Halaka. How are you?
How are you, man?
You good? You still in Delaware, or?
Delaware.
The last time I talked to you, Akhi.
No, I didn't go. I didn't know.
That was Ziyad's colorblind, Akhi.
You
were colorblind. How you been, man?
Same number?
Same number. 718. Same number.
Let me see. Hold on. Because I know in the summer I got it from you.
Same number, Akhi.
718
872
872 8054.
That's right.
Yeah,
You got it. You let me know, inshallah.
No, inshallah. You heard about the Imam Ibrahim?
Yes. I thought Alameen. Inshallah,
Okay,
he's well.
okay?
Yeah, he's well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just make dua.
No.
Inshallah, but he's stable.
He's stable? Okay.
Yeah. Last time I spoke with him.
Okay. You're about to give talk?
Yes,
talk?
inshallah.
What is he about topic? Okay, no. Inshallah.
Whatever comes to the eyes. How you doing, Sheikh?
I'm good, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, how you feeling?
I'm
Good?
Wonderful, man.
Staying warm?
Man,
Warm and dry? That's right.
Inshallah, we're good now.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, sallallahu sallam ala nabi. First question says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Shaykh. May Allah reward you and all those who make hadith disciple possible. May Allah increase you in all khair in this life and the next. Ameen. I have a few questions, so I thought I will put one in an email. Hope that's okay, inshallah. What's the correct opinion of the majority opinion on the issue with reciting Surah Al-Fatiha after the Imam has done it in a prayer which is recited aloud? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. All praises for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has facilitated and made easy. May Allah reward you well for your good intentions and for your kind words. With regards to the first question, or the question that we read, someone praying behind the Imam and he's reading aloud, such as Salat al-Maghrib or Salat al-Jumu'ah. Should the one praying behind the Imam recite the Fatiha after the Imam or not? What's the correct opinion or the majority opinion? First and foremost, just because the majority of the fuqaha, or it is said, yuqal, Allahu alam, but it is said that this is the majority of the fuqaha who hold this view, doesn't necessarily mean that's the strongest view. and the critical analysis. But this is with regards to a student of knowledge or someone who's an erudite scholar. As far as the layman, then oftentimes, and not all of the time, but oftentimes there's safety and the layman getting the view or taking the view of the majority of the people of knowledge. Even though the view that you should take should be the view that is given to you by the trusted, respected individual and personality whom you ask about the specific situation. That's a long discussion with regards to usul and with regards to the rules of al-istiftah, the rulings of seeking a fatwa and the rulings of giving a fatwa. And alhamdulillah, from the best books is a modern day book by Sheikh Al-Shithri, Sa'ad Al-Shithri, with regards to qawaid, the usul and the qawaid, the principles and the maxims of fiqh lil Muslim al-ghayr al-mujtahid, for the Muslim who's a layman. Excellent book in Arabic, and the book can also be found in English as well. Last week I found out finally that the book was been translated in English. Very important book with regards to the basic rules and the basic principles for a layman Muslim with regards to asking a question, following the madhab, seeking a fatwa, so on and so forth. So it's a very good book you should go back to. As far as the specifics of the answer, then most of the people of knowledge from the Salaf and the Khalaf, the past, and those who came after the virtuous generations, most of them, they say that if the prayer is a prayer which is recited audibly, it's out loud, then the Muslim behind the Imam should remain silent. The Muslim should remain silent. They have many proofs and evidences to support this view. From the most authentic and from the strongest is from the Quran al-Kareem. Allah says, وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. Allah says towards the end of chapter 16, Surah An-Nahl, and when the Quran is recited, فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ, then listen, وَأَنصِتُوا, and pay close attention in order for you to receive mercy. Ibn Jarir al-Tabari rahimahullah and many others, they say that this ayah was sent down concerning reciting the Fatiha behind the Imam and a prayer that is recited aloud. So that's the view of those ulama. It's not consensus. Alright, there are other ulama who say that rather you should recite the Fatiha due to the generality of the hadith of Ubadah ibn as-Samit. It's collected in the Sahih, which the Prophet ﷺ said, La salata liman lam yaqra' bi Fatihatil kitab. There's no prayer for those who do not recite the Fatiha of the book. What's important is that's a long scholastic discussion and debate, and hopefully that is a sufficient answer to the question. Wallahu a'lam. Next question says, what would you suggest to be the best way for a person, in parentheses a non-Arab, who can already read Quran to go about learning Arabic? I.e., he doesn't understand, but he wants to be able to understand it and wants to read classical Arabic books, as well as, inshallah, learning to conversate in Arabic as well. Jazakallahu khairan for your time, Sheikh. Forgive me for the length and keep me in your du'as, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. May Allah give you success in this life and in the next. May Allah make you firm in the grave. May Allah Azza wa Jal allow you into Jannah. With regards to the question, something that is, alhamdulillah, in 2018, you have many avenues, many different outlets, many different scenarios that didn't necessarily exist in the past. There are all types of institutes, universities, schools, academies, all types of websites, all types of apps, different types of software, all types of things for you to study Arabic with the teacher or to study it and learn it with yourself. What's important is not asking how, not finding and figuring out how, but is asking yourself what energy and effort are you going to put forth? What are you willing to give up? If I told you right now this is the best way, or this is one of the best ways, or one of the best places, what are you going to do? What effort are you going to put forth? What effort are you going to put forth to learn Arabic, okay? What's important is, I would recommend and I would suggest that you build upon what you've previously learned. If you can read the Quran al-Kareem, you can read from the Mus'haf Sharif in its original language, continue to read. And try to sit down and recognize certain words and certain terms, alright? Try to perfect your reading. Try to get rid of any error or slipping or crookedness of the tongue. And then, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, learn the basic vocabulary. Basic, simple, everyday vocabulary. Don't get into Shakespeare. Get into the basic, simple words. Basic pronunciation of those words, and continue to build gradually. If you have a teacher, then of course that's even better. Follow the guidance of your teacher. Listen to what your teacher tells you to do. Because the teacher not only has the knowledge, or is presupposed to have more knowledge than the pupil, but the teacher has something which is more valuable than knowledge, and that is life experience. Actual experience. They've been there and back. If they have taught other students and produced other students, they have experience. So that's what you want to really benefit from, being the nice subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what's important is, it doesn't matter what book or what program or what institute, as long as you study in a proper systematic way. You take small baby steps, and then you stand up, you take bigger steps until you can hurdle and leap. As Allah tells us in the glorious Quran, فَسَالَتْ أَوْدِيَةٌ بِقَدْرِهَا. He says that valleys flow in their true measure. Valleys flow according to their true measure. Step by step, piece by piece, remain consistent, and small knowledge before big and difficult knowledge. Please go back to all of the videos that we've done on Arabic with regards to the theory and the philosophy, and also actual practical classes as well. Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best. Assalamu alaikum Mufti. I have a question. I would like to know, if a wife confesses to have slept with another man, should her husband divorce her, or the marriage is automatically cancelled? And in the other case, if a husband commits zina, should his wife divorce him? Thank you. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. There lies no doubt that zina is haram in Islam, as we all know, and it's from the ugliest of sins, as we all know as well. And we all know that it is impermissible for a Muslim man, a believing man, to be married to a fornicatress, just like it is impermissible for a believing woman to be married to a fornicator, as we have previously answered on Mufti Q&A before from the ayah of Surah An-Nur. وَحُرِّمَ ذَلِكَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Allah tells us the male is not to marry a fornicatress, a female believer is not to marry a fornicator, etc. Okay, and that is unlawful upon the believers. What's important is the tafsir of that ayah, and what the scholars of Islam say about that ayah. What's important, in brief, is that if your wife confesses to have slept with another man, and she feels regret, she feels sorrow, she feels bad, she actually has a great deal of remorse, and she's made repentance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and she asks you to forgive her and to pardon her, and that is going to help her to remain steadfast, and you have the physical ability, and you're confident that you'll have the ability to prevent her from zina in the future, with regards to pleasing your wife sexually, giving your wife, more important than sex is actual attention and affection, which oftentimes are reasons behind a woman making zina or a man making zina, because they feel neglected or abandoned or unappreciated, whatever the case may be. So, if she is remorseful, number one, if she made a good repentance, number two, if she's willing to avoid it and not go back to it, and you feel that you can keep her from that, bi'idhnillah, then perhaps it's best to forgive your wife and pardon her and remain married to her. And the same applies to the man as well. But if there is no sincere repentance, there's no remorse or regret, you feel like it's going to happen again, or you feel you're incapable of sexually pleasing your spouse, or whatever the case may be, then that's a different story. If it's an issue of an STI or an STD, if it's an issue of staying in the bed of marriage, illegitimate child, bringing as your child, etc., then that's a different story. What's important is, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, that those, He says, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ. He says, those, they spin, فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ, good times and bad times, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. He says, and those who suppress their rage and forgive the people. Allah, He tells us about those who avoid كبائر الإثم والفواحش. They stay away from كبائر الإثم والفواحش, these sins and lewdness and indecent illicit acts. وَإِذَا مَا غَضِبُوا هُمْ يَغْفِرُونَ. Allah says, and when they become angry, they forgive. So if you forgive a Muslim, and that is going to help the Muslim and steer them in a positive direction of light, then perhaps that's best. If forgiving them is going to cause them to become haughty and feel like they can get away with it, then that is a different story. Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best. Fadal. That's it. That's three.
Again, somewhere where Sharia is not being implemented, or that's across the board?
Say that one more time. I can't see you. I can't.
The what you said, ruling or what the scholar said about the issue, is that in a situation where say what kufr reigns or just
Clear. Question is with regards to, is this scenario applicable to a non-Islamic land or an Islamic land in which the Sharia reigns dominant? It's applicable to both situations and both scenarios. Now, we have to understand a little bit about the Sharia and about a land in which the Sharia is used as its constitution and government. Just because a land has the Sharia does not mean that it's going to be a perfect land free of sin. It does not mean, nor does it necessitate that it is a utopia. Do we understand that the proofs and the evidences for zina being haram and for stoning this type of fornicator or lashing this type of fornicator, those verses and those hadiths were said when and where? In Medina, in the time of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there were people who made zina in Medina, people that were stoned in Medina. Okay, so just because it is a pure land or a Sharia compliant land doesn't mean it's perfect. That's first and foremost. Number two, and many people that have this fallacy, they think this. Number two is, in the land of the Sharia, a person can make zina and it not be discovered. They could do it in private, in secrecy, and they can get away with it. The zina that is punishable is when the proper conditions are met and you're caught in the act, or a person confesses, etc. The proper conditions. But a person can make zina and no one can find out about it. And the law covers and hides the faults of his slaves. What's important is, if a Muslim makes zina in the lands of Islam and no one finds out about it, then the best thing to do, as the people of knowledge say, is to repent. Cover yourself. Hide yourself. Allah covered you. Allah hid you. You should not expose yourself. You should not expose yourself. And this is even more applicable in America or the UK. Don't say, stone me to death because I made zina. No. Hide yourself. Okay? As one of the pious predecessors, he used to say, لو أن للذنوب رائحة لما جالسني أحد. He says, if sins had a stench, if sins had a tangible odor, no one would sit around me. No one would sit around me if you could smell my sins. So you don't know what sin the next man has committed. And that is why you're supposed to be under the screen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah loves to hide and pardon his slaves. So it's disrespectful to Allah for you to publicize something that Allah has hid. As it states in some narrations, كل أمتي معافى إلا المجاهرين أو كما قيل. Hadith of the narration that says all of my nation will be forgiven except for those who publicize their sins. So therefore, if a person has the ability to forgive and to forbear and to pardon, and it's going to help the Muslim, perhaps that's best. If it's going to lead the Muslim into further sin, perhaps that's not best. And Allah knows best. Hopefully that's clear. Khalid.
When you're making wudu and you wipe over your socks, should you wipe over one foot at a time or both at the same time?
Question says, when you make wudu and you're wiping over your socks, should you wipe over both socks at the same time, or the right then the left? According to many of the people of knowledge, it's optional. And it doesn't matter which one you do, whether you do right then left or both at the same time. And some of the people of knowledge, they say that which is most thorough is to do it at the same time. Whereas the Prophet ﷺ, he said to Mughira radiallahu anhu, he says, إِنِّي أَدْخَلْتُهُمَا طَاهِرَتَيْنِ أو أَدْخَلْتُهُمَا وَهُمَا طَاهِرَتَانِ. He says, I put these on and they were both pure, meaning at the same time. Inshallah, hopefully it's optional. Bismillah. Fadl. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Read the hadith that speaks about the silent and the loud prayers.
Okay.
What hadith is that? Because I heard, we pray like Asa. We pray Asa is silent. You know what I mean? But where's the evidence of that?
Tayyib.
Yeah.
Question says, with regards to silent and loud prayers, what is the evidence for that? We say that this is taken from the hadith collectively. Collectively. It's not just one hadith. All of the fiqh of the salah is taken collectively. And there are narrations in which the companions clearly narrated what the Prophet ﷺ recited. This surah, this long. And they're specifically mentioned Fajr. They're specifically mentioned Maghrib. Specifically mentioned Al-Isha. Specifically mentioned Al-Jum'ah. Specifically mentioned Eid. Specifically mentioned Witr at night. And in the other narrations, the companions, they would say, we knew that the Prophet was reciting بِالْتِرَابِ لِحْيَتِهِ. Hadith says by the shaking of his beard. By the shaking of his beard. See what you just did? You closed your mouth and your beard moved. So they said that when the Prophet was silent in the prayer, Dhuhr and Asr, clearly mentioned specifically, they saw his beard moving and knew he was reciting, but silently. So therefore there are several proofs and evidences that state that the Prophet's practice was this prayer to be made audibly and those prayers to be made silently. Now, for, as we say, FYI, for information, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's haram to recite out loud in Dhuhr prayer. It doesn't mean it's haram, but it's not the sunnah. And it's unnecessary for a person to continually do it. But let's say, for example, hypothetically, somebody did it once and he recited out loud in Salat al-Dhuhr. The people of knowledge, they say, that's not from the things which make the prayer invalid, but it's from the recommended acts of the prayer. So therefore, in brief, whenever you take any book of hadith, you're going to find chapter Bab Sifatul Salah. And they're going to talk about the Prophet's prayer generally and specifically. And when he says, I heard the Messenger of Allah reciting this surah in Maghrib, and in other narrations, they asked the companions, how did the Prophet recite in Salatul Dhuhr? And he would say, we used to count, we used to think, that it was not Allah, collectively. And Allah knows best.
And this was 08 from Dortmund, Germany. How to stay motivated and have thirst for knowledge after losing it?
How to stay motivated and keep your thirst for knowledge after losing it. There are many ways, and alhamdulillah, we've spoken about this many times before. From the most important ways, and perhaps what will suffice ourselves with tonight, is to stay in the company of serious people, of motivated people. Don't look at yourself all the time, but look at those who are around you. And we all know the effects of good and bad companionship. Adverse effects, good and bad effects of the people that are around you. You feel inspired. You feel shy. You feel embarrassed. You feel intimidated when you're around certain people and you're totally lacking behind. You're not giving no effort, no care, no concern. You feel terrible. And obviously you feel the exact opposite when you're the leader and you're the role model and people look up to you. Even if it's a sin that you're making or committing, you have to hide it. You have to try to get over it because it's not right. They're looking for me. They're looking to me for guidance. So the Prophet, he told us this by making a similitude and by making a parable. That the similitude of the righteous companion and the similitude of an evil companion are like two types of men. The first, he says, كَبَائِل misk, is like the seller of perfume. إِمَّا أَن يُحْذِيَكَ وَإِمَّا أَن تَشْتَرِيَ أو أن تبتع منه وإما أن تشم منه ريحا طيبة. He says one of three things will take place. Either he'll give you a free sample, either you'll purchase from him, or either you'll enjoy a nice aroma. I.e., you can't lose around someone that's positive. And the bad companion, he says, كَنَافِخِ الْكِيرِ or كَالْحَدَّادِ, is like an ironsmith or a blacksmith. إِمَّا أَن يُحْلِيَقَ ثِيَابَكَ وَإِمَّا أَن تَشُمَّ مِنْهُ رِيحًا كَرِيهَةً. He says either he'll burn your clothes if you get too close, or you'll smell the putrid smell of iron and sulfur and these things like this. So the company that you keep, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. Be with the truthful people, Allah says, after He commanded us to fear Him. So the company that you keep, the people that you hang around, has a direct effect upon your study habits. And even if you're slipping and you're losing the edge, you'll get it back really quickly if you keep company around these types of brothers. And just stop and look at this masjid where we're at right now, or masjid in Queens, or wherever you are, Germany, wherever you are. Think how many brothers you don't see right now. Where's Brother Fulan? One Jum'ah, okay, he was working. 2 Jum'ahs, 3 Jum'ahs, this Salat, this class, you don't see him. What are the chances of him remaining strong and steadfast, not being around the believers? What are the chances in this dunya, this hayat dunya? What are the chances of you not being distracted and sidetracked from seeking knowledge from the dunya. You have to be sin, don't have to be haram, just dunya. Money, working, bills, this, that. So, the strength is in the jama'ah. The strength is in the jama'ah. You have to keep good company. Also, read the books of the people of knowledge of the past. Read their life stories, what they went through, what they struggled, how they struggled, huh? And there are many, many other reasons that we've explained in other classes on seeking knowledge as well. Wallahu alam.
Initials UZ from New York, New York. I was told one cannot sell an item for 4 times more than they paid for it. Is this true? If so, where may I find the proof?
That which the people of knowledge say, what I've come across myself in my humble studies, is that a Muslim can buy and sell at any price he or she likes. Any price that he or she likes. With keeping in mind, loving for your brother what you love for yourself. And al-Muslim, akhul Muslim. The Muslim is the brother of the Muslim. Naam. And the believers are brethren. Text after text from Kitab and Sunnah, they give us a general ethical discipline and with regards to buying and selling. And it doesn't have to be just with prices. It could be with buying something. It doesn't have to be with selling things. Sometimes you argue and you fight for a price. Give me a discount. Give me another discount. Give me a discount. Come on. You break your brother's pocket trying to get something at a super low cheap price. Do you want that for your brother? To lose money? Do you want your brother just to make back barely what he spent on the product? So ethics and morality is very important when it comes to buying and selling. There is no specific set limit that I know of in the authentic sunnah. But keep in mind that that is your brother, that is your sister. But rather, even if it's not your brother and sister, they may be a kafir or not Muslim, still a human being. And what message are you putting across for the Muslims by breaking people's backs with prices? Are you trying to get rich off of one product? How much barakah will Allah put in your business if that is your attitude towards people, getting rich, and you, just living, as we said, like a fat rat, making so much money and just robbing and raping the people? Is that ethical? And Allah knows best.
Farhad Ali from London. What are the conditions to take out a riba loan?
The question is, what are the conditions for taking out a riba loan? First and foremost, before we get into the conditions, it is upon us to make sure that this loan or this business transaction or dealing is actual riba. And oftentimes, many people, they may think something to be riba, and it's actually not. It's actually not riba. It's actually not riba, but it's misunderstanding or ignorance. That's firstly. Secondly is, if it is actual riba and it's haram, it's clearly unlawful wealth, then it is haram for you to take that wealth, give that wealth, trade with that wealth, deal with that wealth, benefit from that wealth, unless it is a necessity, unless you're compelled, or unless it's something which is a great difficulty, and you don't have an alternative, a suitable, legitimate alternative. At that time, perhaps it's permissible for you to take that haram wealth and use it only according to the need, nothing more. And this is something that many people, they fall into error when it comes to haram business transactions, houses, homes, cars, whatever the case is. You need a vehicle, a suitable vehicle. No one is going to differ on that. I don't know the weather of London right now, but right now here in Brooklyn, snow, slush, ice, driving for 10, 15 minutes to get a parking spot. You need a good car, strong car. Living on the East Coast, harsh winters, you need a 4-wheel drive vehicle. You need a good riding beast. And not something that's going to break down and something that's going to conk out. Islam is never against quality and strength. So I had to get a car with riba. I can't just get any old type of busted car. I have to get a good quality car. But it doesn't mean I have to get the most extravagant, luxurious, fancy car. I need a place for my family, for my wife. But you did not need this extravagant, lush house with riba. So when it comes to the haram and taking the haram because of necessity, it remains as necessity, based off of what is a necessity. It doesn't just mean that you just continue and continue and continue to eat and eat and eat of that haram thing, whatever the haram thing may be. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. Question says, if you mistakenly sent something to someone by mistake and it was completely unintentional, but you feel overwhelmed with guilt, how do you overcome this? Perhaps Allah Azza wa Jal made you make a mistake for you to realize how much you need Him. How much you need Him. And that you are a human being. And oftentimes we get besides ourselves. Even if we don't say it with our tongues. Even if we don't say it with our tongues, our physical dispositions prove that we get besides ourselves, in which we feel that we're free from mistake and we're perfect. Even if you don't say it with your tongue, and you know you accept the fact that the Prophet ﷺ is quoted to have said, "Kullu bani Adam khata." All of Adam's sons are sinners. Wa khayrul khata'in at-tawwabun. And the best of his sinful sons are those who make repentance. We know this hadith with our tongues. We know the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said, in which he tells us how much Allah loves to be called upon, and how much Allah loves to be begged for His forgiveness. And if you did make sin, Allah would bring a people who made sin, and they would seek His forgiveness, and He would forgive them. We know these things, we say these things, but our actions oftentimes prove otherwise. The people of knowledge, they say, the wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba oversleeping for Salat al-Fajr that day when they were returning from that battle, it says, Tasliyat ba'd al-salihin, is to soothe and console some of, or comfort some of the righteous people who may kill themselves metaphorically when they oversleep for Salat. Astaghfirullah, I can't believe I did that. Oh, subhanallah. The Prophet ﷺ did it. The Prophet ﷺ forgot in the Salat. The Prophet ﷺ was almost distracted in the Salat. His wisdom in this. Striving for perfection, without a question. Striving for the best, no doubt, but you are a human being. Allah makes and decrees certain things for you to remain as a humble slave. Alhamdulillah, I need Allah's mercy. No matter how hard I tried, I still made a mistake. Alhamdulillah, la bas. What's important is if it wasn't intentional, it wasn't something that you did intentionally, la bas. It's no sin upon you. Ask Allah to forgive you, apologize, whatever, and that's it. Class, move forward. And don't get stuck, because that is a place in which the shaitan can trip you and cause you to fall into all types of other negative things. Wallahu alam. That's in brief.
Initial SS from Jamaica, New York. What is the difference between following a madhab and Salafiyyah? How do you choose a madhab if you're new to Islam? Jazakallah khair.
The difference between following a madhab and Salafiyyah. How do you choose a madhab if you're a new Muslim, etc.? This is a very, very, very long issue and technical issue. To keep them brief, the term Salafiyyah in itself needs to be defined, because Salafiyyah to one person is not Salafiyyah to another person. And the word Salafiyyah is supposed to be a compound word, a compound term. It's supposed to be ad-da'wah to Salafiyyah, the Salafi da'wah, the call to the way of the Salaf. For one reason or another, one time or another, one person or another, it just became Salafiyyah. Is that right or wrong? That's not the point. But the point is, it means something more. Ad-da'wah to Salafiyyah, the call to the Salaf, the call to the Salaf al-Salih. And the Salaf al-Salih initially meaning the righteous Muslims of the 3 generations. The first 3 generations of the Muslims, the most knowledgeable, the purest, most orthodox understanding and practice of Islam. In all aspects of the religion, creed and theology, worship, character, morals, politics, and the list goes on. All spheres of life, following the purest, untainted version of Islam that's possible. Before the Muslims began to split up and separate into groups and schisms and parties, before the Muslims were affected with this type of theology and this type of rhetoric and this type of theology and this type of culture and this non-Arabic language, and the list goes on. That's the original, we said the original concept of what ad-da'wah to Salafiyyah is supposed to be. As far as a madhab, then the word madhab is supposed to mean a collected compilation of views, principles, and theories of deduction of a great scholar of fiqh. A collective compilation of views, meaning specific issues, and also theories of deducing how to get to this point based off of an imam who himself was a mujtahid, who was an independent, erudite scholar. Someone that was a great scholar of Islam, he lived, and he had students and disciples, and they used to ask him questions. Yeah, Sheikh, what's the ruling on wearing black? Yeah, Sheikh, what's the ruling on wearing green? Yeah, Sheikh, is it permissible to eat the meat of a turtle? Is it permissible to eat the flesh of a crocodile? Is it haram or not? And he says, it's haram. And his students write it down. And he asks him another question. He says, it's halal. And the students write it down. And he asks him everything from A to Z. From water, types of water, how to make wudu, ghusl, how many days does a woman have to wait after she has a baby until she's praying, etc. All the way to the last issue of fiqh. Wills, testament, etc. And not only did they ask him about those specific views, but they also observe his theories and how to deduce the rulings. He didn't accept this hadith for a reason. He accepted this hadith for a reason. He used this principle first. وَهَكَذَا. His system, which some people say school of thought. So that's what's initially meant by a madhab, even though there are other connotations or depictions of the term. طيب. So what's the difference between the two? Initially, the da'wah to Salafiyyah is supposed to be made to connect the people to the kitab and to the sunnah. To connect the people to the book and to the sunnah as the pious predecessors understood them and practiced those texts. And not to connect and attach the people to an individual or a person besides Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the original purpose. It's to keep them from attaching themselves blindly and fanatically to a man or a woman. Now, the issues of fiqh, studying fiqh, teaching fiqh, learning fiqh, does that mean that it goes against the way of the Salaf al-Salih? One of the greatest proponents for da'wah to Salafiyyah was Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. One of the greatest. He was one of the greatest proponents for the call to the original Orthodox Islam. He himself learned the madhab and studied the madhab. He himself was more than proficient in the madhab. Did he ever go outside of that madhab or not? That's a different story. But he himself studied a madhab systematically. Was he a fanatical bigot? Different story. But he learned and studied madhab. So is there even a clash between the two? Can a person say, just because I study Shafi'i fiqh, and a person says, I follow Shafi'i fiqh, does that mean that this person is not upon a da'wah to Salafiyyah? Is that even a must? A person blindly sticking to a set of opinions and rules, and which some of them are against the sunnah clearly, then that's clearly problematic. That's clearly problematic. But a person saying, this is my school of thought, this is what I studied, how I learned, and this is my system, does that mean that a person is now not upon the way of the Salaf al-Salih? That's a very critical question. In brief, the concept of personality worship, a scholar or groups of scholars, is no difference whether it's a fiqh imam or a dawah imam, a scholar who's living today or a scholar of the past, whatever the case may be. Anytime you blindly cling to someone and fanatically cling to someone, and as if you take this person as your dalil and your hujjah, and his statement is superior over all other scholars and imams, then that is problematic. And it's from the ugliest things that the Salaf al-Salih used to consider and hold to be ugly, as ta'assub, as being fanatical for men and for opinions and for views. If you read the stories of the companions, you'll find them refuting each other, disagreeing with each other, speaking against each other. He made a mistake, she made a mistake, so what? This person has lied. You find this vividly. Not because they hated each other, but because they loved the truth. And they didn't want to be clinging and blindly, fanatically attached to any person. So this is bad. Whether it's in the name of a madhab, fiqh issue, this view. He says, I'm Maliki. That's problematic. And the dalil is clear. In the issue of da'wah or aqidah or whatever, he says, I follow Shaykh Fulan. I'm Salafi, I follow Shaykh Fulan. That is also clearly problematic. Allah Azza wa Jal, He told us whenever we differ, and whenever we cannot agree, to take it back to two sources and two sources only. And as two sources are Allah and His Messenger. فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. Then take it back to Allah and to His Messenger. And all affairs of Islam. Not just aqidah, not just bid'ah, not just fiqh, not just madhab. Any issue of Islam. The foundation of your deen is supposed to be Qala Allah, Qala Rasul. Everybody understand this? As Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala used to say, كما جاء عنه, he say what? العلم قال الله قال الرسول قال صحابته هم أولي الإرفان ما العلم نسبك للخلاف سفاهة بين الرسول. He says knowledge is what Allah said, what the messenger said, and what the Sahaba said. They are the people of knowledge. He says knowledge is not your foolish making of fights and battles between qawl Rasul or qawl faqih. What the faqih said and what the Rasul said. That's not knowledge. And that's no different than someone who's alive and someone who's dead. I'll say lastly, rather it's even worse. If you cling fanatically to a scholar who's alive today, and then you talk bad about Hanafi or Maliki or Shafi'i, because Abu Hanifa is dead, Ahmed is dead, Shafi'i is dead, Maliki are dead. What they said, what they did is over. There's nothing else that they can switch and turn. They put forth what they put forth, good or bad. Sheikh Fulan, this Sheikh, that Sheikh that's alive, he can say one thing today, and the next day say totally different. The next week say something totally contrast. And then you as a layman Muslim, as a fanatical blind follower, you're just left to be spun around and twisted around. And history is the greatest teacher. History is the greatest teacher. History doesn't lie. Men lie, books lie, statistics lie. But hardcore history never lies. And we've seen it happen so many times in the Western communities. Today, Sheikh Fulan is the greatest scholar in the West. The next day, he's ignorant, jahil, dal, mudil, dajjal, kadhab. One day, take from him, learn from him, benefit from him. The next day, burn his books, get rid of all the tips, get rid of all the seeds. How many times does it happen? When will you use any common sense? And the reason why it continues to happen is because you're fanatically attaching yourself to someone who changes his view and his opinion like the four seasons change. So use a bit of common sense, as we said, just a bit of common sense. And Allah knows best. That's in brief. Obviously, this issue is details, their ins and their outs. That's in brief. And Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best. Next question from online.
Hafsa L, New York, New York. Assalamu alaikum. What is the ruling on false eyelashes and waxing eyebrows?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. As far as false eyelashes, then it's not necessarily haram. It's not necessarily haram unless it's something to be proven to damage your original eyelashes or damage your eyes, which there are some researchers who say that false or synthetic eyelashes have been proven to do this. As far as waxing one's eyebrows, then that should not be done. Was the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam cursed an-namisa wal mutanammisa. He cursed women who do this with their eyebrows and those who get it done. And the word nums has several interpretations, and many of them, if not one of the most popular of them, is the actual eyebrow being shaved or being waxed. And some of the scholars say even any hair on a woman's face is from nums. What's important is this authentic hadith says that these women are cursed. So waxing, shaving, and trimming one's eyebrows should not be done, regardless whether it's with the permission of the husband or not, in the house or not. That's the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And Allah knows best.
Sister S.E. from Munich, Germany.
Munich.
Munich.
Naam Abdul Qawi?
No.
Munich, solo.
Munich. So, Sister S.E. from Munich, Germany. If the entrance to the sisters section in the masjid is in the direction of the Qibla, the prayer has already started and there is no way of getting to the last row, but there's still place to make a new first row. Is it allowed to make a new row in the front?
Right. Yeah, the question isn't absolutely clear. A new row in the front, meaning with the brothers?
Sister section.
In the sister section. Say the question once more. The sister comes into the musalla, and the direction of the prayer is in the sister side, correct?
If the entrance to the sister section in the mosque is in the direction of the Qibla,
Right.
the prayer has already started and there's no way of getting to the last row, but there's still place to make a new first row. Is it allowed to make a new row in the front?
What's important is,
There's room in front to make another song.
why are the women in the back?
They're in a different section of the sister section of the mosque.
And she's coming in the sister section, correct?
And she's walking in the front, she can't get to the back. For instance, like right here, came in,
Clear. And the sisters are in the back.
she can't get to the back row of the sisters.
That's where the sisters are.
Yeah.
The sisters are in the back, correct?
No, this is the
But it's
sister
the sister
section.
side already.
No, the sisters is here,
It's the sisters.
and they come, and she's
Yeah.
coming in here, and she's facing the sisters.
And the sisters are in the back. She's coming in and they're
No, the sisters.
It's a sister
There's
section.
a door right behind
Like,
you.
for instance,
Say-
you see the section for the sisters right here?
Sorry, everybody slow down. Elijah.
Say if there's a door right here.
Okay. She walks in the door.
Mr. Kipler. Sisters is right here
Clear.
and whatnot.
Crystal
All the way
clear.
to the back.
And she's right here.
And she coming in.
Clear. The sisters are in the
No,
they're in the back.
Right from the
Right here.
front to the back.
Everybody listen very carefully. Everybody listen very carefully. We're mixing things up. This is what I understood from the question. I could be mistaken. Based off what Elijah said, let's say hypothetically this is the entrance, correct? Sister Karima, she comes in the entrance. This space is open where I'm sitting, correct?
yes,
But no one has made a row yet.
Yes.
And the sisters are,
but they facing her.
that's besides the point. The sisters are in rows. So they are in the back. And she's in the front.
Okay.
Can't make it to the last row.
It's besides the point where she can go or not. We have to make the conceptualization. Once more, listen carefully. She comes in the door here, Karima. Where I'm sitting is empty. Sisters are already in rows. She's in front of those sisters and they are considered to be in the back because the Qibla is coming forward.
Yes,
Correct?
yes, I understand, yes.
We got it or not? Tayyib. So my question, as I just said, why are the sisters in the back? The sisters should be in the front. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, the best rows for men are the front rows. وَشَرُّ صُفُوفِ النِّسَاءِ And the worst rows for women are the what? He says, the Prophet says, the best rows for men are the first, and the worst rows for men are the what? Are the last. And it says the best rows for the what? Women are the back, and the worst rows for women are the? When the men and women are in one musalla.
Right.
When the men and women are praying in what?
One musalla.
One musalla.
Okay.
When the women, one second Hatim, when the brothers and sisters are praying in one what? Musalla. The best place for the men is to move, and the best place for the women to be is in the, and then move up, because of mixing. If the men and women are separated, this hadith no longer applies. Because the wisdom behind the hadith is khashyatul ikhtilat bayn al-jinsayn. Is the problem of men and women being put through infatuation. Looking at a sister or brother instead of praying. Everybody understand this? So therefore, Sister Fulana, said Sister Karima, she comes in like this. The sisters are back here, correct? In rows, right? It's empty space here. These sisters are supposed to be up here and then moving back. And not the exact opposite of the hadith. And as we explained this before, one second Hatim, with regards to the proper fiqh of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And many problems that we come when we make up rules and things for ourselves. When we have sisters in a whole different section and area. Am I calling to free mixing? Muhammad Munir is saying men and women should mix and sit and drink coffee and eat donuts? No. It's not what Muhammad Munir is saying. What Muhammad Munir is saying is don't go extreme and saying that everything's a bid'ah. But the Prophet ﷺ had the men and women in how many rooms in his time? One. And what was sufficient for them is surely sufficient unless we start making things up. And that's obviously problematic when that door is opened up. So the fitna in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, men and women mixing, he says, مَا تَرَكْتُ بَعْدِ فِتْنَةً هِيَ أَضَرُّ عَلَى الرِّجَالِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ The hadith of Usama radiallahu anhu in the Sahihain. There's not a fitna left behind as harsh upon men and women. There's worse upon men and women. He said in his time. In his time. So therefore, the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't separate the women. He didn't build a barrier. He didn't build a wall. And there it was, he clearly said what? Fitna. Today, in the masjids, there's a total separate area for women. They can't see the imam, hear the imam, nothing. And the person is claimed to follow the sunnah. And everyone else is upon bid'ah misguidance. That's hypocritical. And there are many wisdoms in men and women being in the same musalla. And there are also many harms in men and women being in different musallas with regards to the jama'ah prayer. We've explained this in Lu'lu Marjan several weeks ago and other classes before. So at the end of the day, when the sister comes into the musalla and there's empty space right here, then she should make her own row. If she can get in and nudge herself in the ranks with the sisters in the back, tayyib. And if there's no space absolutely, period, then she has the excuse, inshallah, of coming forward and waiting for a sister. According to some ulama, she can pray by herself in a row. Bidnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. As far as the sutra, Hatim, then the sutra is only the sutra of the imam. The sutra of the imam is the sutra for those who pray behind him. Based off of the hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas in the Sahih. When he says, I went to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu, they were performing the pilgrimage. And he says, I was riding upon, I says, ala atan, a she-ass, a female donkey. He says, so I got off the donkey, and I let the donkey walk through the rows. And I got in the rows myself. فَلَمْ يُنْكِرْ أو فَلَمْ يُنْكَرْ ذَلِكَ عَلَيْهِ. He says, no one said anything about that. So this hadith and many others prove that the sutra of the imam is the sutra of those who pray behind him. So once the imam has his sutra, all of those who are in the rows, 50, 100, 5,000 rows, you can walk between them. And it does not nullify, break, or disturb the salah. Clear, Hatim? We made a two main parts on the sutra of the salah. And we spoke about these issues in what? Detail. Please go back to that video. Inshallah ta'ala. Allah knows best. Hopefully that's clear. Elijah.
I came across first the question is this. You fall asleep, right? And you fall asleep. You go into a deep sleep. And you wake up. Should you perform wudu before you make salah? The reason why I'm asking this question is because I came across a hadith in Sahih Bukhari where it said that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's a big hadith, but I'm just cutting through it, where he went to sleep and he woke up and he didn't perform the wudu. You familiar with that hadith?
Right. The question is regarding going to sleep, going into deep sleep, and getting up and praying. Do you have to make wudu or not?
After you made a wudu, he made wudu once.
Right.
He made wudu once.
Crystal clear.
And then he prayed.
Crystal
then
clear.
He went to sleep. Then he woke up and he didn't make wudu.
Crystal clear. At the end of the day, brothers and sisters, the issue of sleeping and making wudu, various different ways of looking at it. The Prophet ﷺ, he instructed us that when we sleep to make wudu. Does that mean sitting on your bottom, sleeping standing up, sleeping on your side, snoozing, or actual sleep? What's important is when you sleep, it's best to make the wudu. As far as if you're sitting down and your head bobs a few times, is that necessarily considered sleep? On your alarm clock, the alarm clock goes off, you hear it going off, whether you have birds chirping or frogs or crickets, peepers, sounds, whatever wakes you up, music, whatever was on your alarm clock, you're up, you have consciousness. And the first thing you do, you hit the button, and the button says what on the sleep button? No, it says sleep button, right? It says snooze button. In other words, 10 more minutes, because you're no longer what? Sleep. You're up to an extent. You just want a little extra time. Snoozing. So, what is considered sleep? What isn't considered sleep? Everybody understand this? This is the reason why the ulama of Islam differ on sitting down, sleeping, your head going back and forth. Is it actual sleep or not? Everybody clear on this or not? As far as the Prophet ﷺ, then we know that he has special traits and characteristics. And from them is the Prophet ﷺ's heart did not sleep. His heart did not sleep, ﷺ. And there was never ever a time in which the Prophet ﷺ would ever be exposed to the people breaking their wudu and him breaking his wudu through sleep. That's specific to the Prophet ﷺ. Specific because in his sleep you get revelation. You clear on that?
Yeah,
as far as
that same hadith, it does say that too.
Crystal clear.
It does say that.
As far as the normal person, the average normal person, then that is a view, or there are several views of the people of knowledge, and perhaps the correct view is that if you sleep and you're not sitting up and you actually lose awareness and consciousness, then make the wudu. The people of knowledge, they say a simple way of determining this would be if you're holding a pen. Even though you're sitting down and you wake up and the pin is on the ground, they say make wudu. They say make the wudu. Even if you were sitting down. And others, they say as long as you were sitting down, there's no wudu. What's important is the scholars of Islam, they differ on what sleep is. هل النوم ناقض للوضوء أم هو مظنة خروج الريح. They differ on whether sleep itself is something that breaks wudu, or whether sleep is the doorway and a gateway of passing wind or touching your private part. This is a very long discussion on does sleep break the wudu or not. The correct view, hopefully, and the safest, strongest view is that if you're sitting down on your bottom and you have relative consciousness, you're aware, you just snoozed and dozed off, la bas. Or even if you were in deep sleep, but you were sitting down and you never lie down, then perhaps you don't have to make the wudu. At the end of the day, it's always best to make the wudu. Khair inshallah. Allah, that's in brief. Question says, can you clarify the permissibility of wearing false eyelashes? Do the false eyelashes fall under extensions of deceiving the people? Barakallahu feekum. We previously answered that question, and we said that false eyelashes would be haram if they are harmful to the body, or if they're worn in an area in which it's a means of zina, of beauty and adornment to someone who isn't a mahram. As far as it being a means of extending the hair and extending the head, al-wasl, doesn't necessarily have to mean that. It does not necessarily have to mean that. Some say that any type of extension, period. And others say it's the extension that is on the actual head. The extension of the hair on the head. Wallahu alam.
Initials FA from London. Can someone beat up his blood brother because he disrespected the mother?
If someone disrespects your mother, you should advise him, shake him up with your words. Don't put your hands on no one unless it's an absolute necessity. Putting your hands on someone, Muslim or non-Muslim, could lead to more greater problems. There's people of knowledge, such as Sheikh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, they say, from the proper fiqh of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, from the proper understanding, and there's no doubt, the fiqh of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, there's so many verses in the Quran and hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that talk about enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, and how it is important, it's an obligation, it is dangerous to be left off, it is virtuous. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. The Muslims are the best nation because they enjoy the good and forbid the evil. But there is a fiqh to these texts, these verses and these hadiths. There's a proper understanding and there's an improper understanding thereof. And from the fiqh of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil is that it doesn't lead to a greater harm. It doesn't lead to a bigger problem. It doesn't snowball or balloon into a uglier situation. So you beat your brother up, your blood brother, because he disrespects your mother. What happens after that? He retaliates against you. Or he rebels even more. Or wishes to disrespect his mother even more. He goes to the police. He picks up a weapon. What's going to happen? So therefore, if someone is disrespecting their parents, your mother, advise them with your words. Tell them, shake them up. Listen, stop talking to Umi like that. I'm not going to tolerate that. Don't talk to mother like that. That's one thing. But I'll ask you this one question. Have you put forth the best example for your little brother or your older brother? Have you been a good role model? Have you always been respectful and obedient to Umi? Or were you once wild and crazy and disrespectful? Oftentimes we are like this. You had tattoos, smoking weed, drinking alcohol, going out with girls, doing this, going on that. And then you became religious and enlightened. And then the whole entire world has to be like the train which the emergency brake is pulled. Everybody has to screech, come to a halt immediately. And then you want to get aggressive and physical. That's not necessarily proper because the law was patient with you and the people were patient with you when you were sinful. So be mindful and know for sure that there are fruits of sins. All right? There are fruits that have to be, you have to deal with. And from those fruits, there's your little brother walking in your path. Even though you stopped, you're done with it. It's bad, it's evil. But he may be in the beginning of what you've already been through and finished. And you have to be patient upon that. And you being physically violent is not necessarily the answer. As far as if he's physically hitting your mother, then that's a different story. And Allah knows best.
Hi, Islam from New York, New York. What is your opinion on taking the good and leaving the bad when it comes to the kuffar, innovators and the kuffar?
I have no opinion on this issue. There's no opinion about taking the haqq and leaving off the falsehood. That's the obligation of every single Muslim. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said to Abu Hurairah in hadith collected by Imam Abu Dawood, وَأَخْرَجَهُ الْبُخَارِ تَعْلِيقًا, that the man came as an old poor beggar and he stole from the sadaqah. Abu Hurairah says, "We want to take you to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ." He says, "Please, I'm old, I have a family, I'm poor." He let him go. He came a second night, a third night, and he wasn't going to let him go. And he says, "If you let me go, I'll give you a benefit." And he told him to recite Al-Kursi, and how Allah will protect you and no shaitan will come near you until you wake up. Abu Hurairah told the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Sadaqak wa huwa kadhub." He says he's been truthful. He told you the truth even though he's a liar. He spoke the truth to you, but he's a great liar. So taking the haqq from whoever brings it, that's something that every Muslim is supposed to implement. That's in general. As far as learning and studying with an innovator or with a non-Muslim, that's a total different story. Because from the conditions of the people whom you take knowledge from, is that they be righteous and pious, and they be qualified, and they be someone who's ahl, someone should be taken from. And obviously bid'ah isn't sunnah, kufr isn't iman, sin isn't piety. So the teacher that you take as your ustad, as your muallim, should be someone who has all of those characteristics: Islam, knowledge, piety, sunnah, and the list goes forward. But that doesn't mean that you reject the truth or you reject the statement of wisdom because a kafir brings it or a deviant Muslim brings it. That's wrong. Everybody clear on this or not? This is what the people of knowledge say. As far as actually learning from someone who is an innovator, and that's dangerous, calling someone an innovator and throwing that term around. Or even someone's upon innovation or a deviant. That's dangerous. Be careful. Be mindful what you say. It may be true. It may not be true. Do you even know? Are you a muqallid, a blind follower yourself, or a mujtahid yourself? What are you? You're following somebody. You don't even know what's going on. Calling and abusing people, and you're a tag-along, a follower. It's very dangerous. If tabarra alladhina tubi'u min alladhina taba'u. On the day of judgment, Allah says, when the heads will free themselves from the followers. They will declare themselves free from the groupies. We have nothing to do with you. We never told you to follow us. And they're lying, of course. وَرَوْا الْعَذَابِ وَتَقَطَّعَتْ بِهِمُ الْأَسْبَابِ. Allah says, and they see the fire, they see the punishment, and all relations are severed now. They're cut off. So this person that you're following on the day of judgment is going to drop you like a hot plate. So don't be a follower yourself. Call someone a deviant, someone guided, if that's what you truly believe, with knowledge and with science. And if not, then refrain from speaking. So is a student of knowledge allowed to take from someone who actually is an innovator or person of innovation? Is detail on who the student of knowledge is. It's detail on what science you're learning. It is detail on who and who isn't available. It is not a black and white issue. And anyone who says it is a black and white issue, it's this and it's that, they're lying. It's not true. And Allah knows best.
Assalamu alaikum. This is MS from Washington, D.C. Can you describe the proper way of defacing the depiction of an image of an animal in clothing? The depiction of an animal in clothing.
Well, first and foremost, who said that you have to deface an animal on clothing? Who said that? An animal on a human being or something that has a soul. That's ruh. On the wall, a sculpting, a picture, an image, that's one thing. But who said that you have to take it off of a piece of clothing? Who said that? Also, every animal has to be defaced or certain animals, real life animals, animals that actually exist. Something that's totally fictional and figurative, does that have to be defaced? Something that you sit upon or lie upon, does that have to be defaced? Something that's 3D or 2D. There's details in this issue. What's important is, if it's something that is actually living in the world, that Allah actually created, and someone is imitating and trying to create, and it's done by hand, not through means of technology, then cross out the face and disconnect the neck from the head. And brief, and Allah knows best. Fadal.
Now, I'm going to turn it over a little bit. Allah in His prophet says that we're one brotherhood. Now, I've raised this question because I'm going through something with a friend of mine, and to say that to these different orders, these different Sufi orders, they have different legislative issues and how they conduct their way. Now, he says that his argument to me is that we should put more ibadah in. It's good. It's a good thing, even though it's ordered way. And I'm looking at him and saying that he couldn't give me any kind of evidence showing that the Prophet ﷺ, because the Prophet said, "I know Allah better than any of you." So if what he given us, his sunnah, given us to get closer and closer to Allah, the way he gave it to us, his sunnahs and traditions and everything, how could my answer to him is, how could that be get you more closer to Allah than what somebody else can come and give you?
Clear.
Can you speak on that, please?
Question says, with regards to the Muslims supposed to be one brotherhood, and we have different Sufi orders that have different legislative issues and different organizations, different ways, different schools, etc. And the Prophet ﷺ said that, Khalil, you be mindful. The eyes of what, Yasin? Right. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that I know of Allah better than any of you. And if his way wasn't sufficient or good enough to get us to Allah, how can another way be, etc. And I asked someone about this and they didn't give me any type of solid evidence, etc. When the Prophet ﷺ was asked by Jibreel about the hour, when will the last day be? He said, Mal mas'ulu anha bi'a'lama min as-sa'il. He says the one who's being asked has no more knowledge than the one who's asking. So I can't answer that question. I have no idea of answering that question. If Muhammad's way, which is clear and plain, he says, I know Allah more than any of you. I have more piety, more fear of Allah than anyone from among you. And his way wasn't good enough to get to Allah. How can someone else's way, Sufi or not? La adri, I have no idea. The shortest distance between 2 points is a what? Straight line. I can't answer that question, Sheikh. Yani, just common sense. How can you be more pious than Muhammad? What can get you closer to Allah than Muhammad unless you believe that there were men who were closer to Allah than Muhammad and more pious and more fearing of Allah than Muhammad. And there are, or the sad and bitter reality of many Sufi orders is this principle, is that the awliya, the walis, the righteous saints, the righteous men were better than the prophets, waliyadu billah. And that the prophets only came to give the information to the general masses, al-amma. And the awliya, they were khasa. They were the best of the best. And to say that there is a wali, a religious man, no matter how righteous he may be, is better than a prophet or closer to Allah than a prophet, that's kufr akbar. Why is it kufr akbar? Khalil, how did this righteous man become righteous except through who?
Through following the Prophet.
Through Muhammad's guidance. So how can he be closer to Allah than Muhammad? So I can't answer that question, Sheikh, if that's someone's attitude. And it shows you the danger of this bid'ah.
That's what I'm talking about.
And the average person, of course, he's not going to think this. The average person, he doesn't have no idea, no clue. But this is the dangerous foundation of this concept, among many and not all. And that's incorrect to say that all Sufis are the same. And we're not promoting Sufism. We're not condoning Sufism, but we're being just to say that all of them have the same track and train of thought. That's wrong. But many of them, this is their foundation and their fundamental principle, that these walis are closer to Allah than the prophets and the messengers. And that's kufr akbar, waliyadu billah. So at the end of the day, Muhammad ﷺ's way was more than enough. If you can prove in the Quran one verse that there were men or ways that is better, closer to Allah than Muhammad's way, please share it with us. And we'll follow that. And if you can't, then it's upon you to submit to what? To the truth. Don't argue. If you can give someone nasiha, give them nasiha. If you can call someone to the deen, call them to the deen. And that's it. Make dua.
I leave it.
Make dua for them. The sad reality, the average Muslim today is following. Allahumma musta'an. May Allah protect us from that.
Thank you.
Sheikh Yusuf. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. How are you doing, Sheikh?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. I'm great.
Alhamdulillah, good.
And you know what even makes me more wonderful? Just even seeing you make me wonderful.
I feel the same when I see you, Sheikh.
So,
Allah's name be praised.
I wanted to go back and say this one that you had made a mention of. You say the following of the madhab and the following of the of the Salafi order. As I went through, Allah Azza wa Jalla says that you take this deen, and all of you divide it among yourself in your own misunderstanding. Your own misunderstanding. Right? You take this deen, you divide it. Muhammad the Prophet said, and my ummah will be divided in 73 different sects, and all of you in your own misunderstanding will claim that you are on this path. But these are only labels, because when I look at it, it's nothing but oppression. Different groups is trying to oppress different, they're trying to be able to build a new plantation, another slave plantation. And this slave plantation is in Islam. But Islam frees the individual from slavehality. And the only slave you're supposed to be is the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not the slave of no man, no preacher, or no institution whatsoever. And Allah Azza wa Jalla say, this day, we call this deen, we call you Muslim. We didn't call you Salafi, we didn't call you Hanafi, we didn't call you Shafi, Maliki, none of that. We call you Muslims this day.
No, he did say that.
Well said, Sheikh. Well said.
No, he didn't say that.
Next question. I agree.
Lutfi H from Queens, New York.
We gotta understand something, Ikhwan. No, we gotta move on 2 points. Point number 1. Me and Sheikh Yusuf have a special relationship. Well, alhamdulillah. No question. Regardless of Khalil, Jamal, me and Sheikh Yusuf are okay. We always been okay. Right, Sheikh? From day one. And I always supported you, Sheikh. When they try to keep you silent, I always let you talk. That's number 2. Number 2, second point, Barakallahu Feek, is I don't disagree with you. Is anyone who's calling to a plantation or slave mentality in this name or title or term or label or package, I agree. Islam is meant to emancipate man from worshiping man. And there are different forms and images of worship. There's no doubt about that. Next question. From online. تفضل. وعليكم السلام.
H from Queens, New York City, New York. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Hope all is well with you and your family. My question is, what is the difference between conditions, obligations, pillars, and an act of worship? Shukran.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. May Allah bless you as well, akhi. Jazakallah khairan. Inshallah, this will be our last question tonight. In brief, a pillar, an obligation, and a condition in the actual act of worship. Let's make, for example, let's talk about the salah. And then let's talk about a building, a structure. So the salah is the act of worship. Is an act or a statement, a disposition, a belief that Allah has commanded us to do. Meaning that Allah loves it and Allah is pleased with that thing. Wa aqimus salah. Allah says an established prayer. So prayer is ibadah, is worship. So therefore, how are we to perform this worship? We are to perform this worship in the manner in which the Messenger of Allah performed it. Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray like you see me praying. How did the Prophet pray? Did he pray? Going back to Brother Elijah's question. Is this one hadith that we have? No. We have several hadiths. So the people of knowledge, the scholars of Islam, the fuqaha, the jurists, the law doctors, they looked into those hadiths collectively. And they put them all on the table. And they sorted through them. They sifted through them. And they classified them. And they came out with conclusions. Some of those conclusions are, this thing has to be done in order for your prayer to be valid. Some of those conclusions are, this thing cannot be done if you want your prayer to be valid. Certain conclusions are, this is a recommended, preferable thing to be done for your prayer. And other conclusions are, is that this is something that has to be done before the salah. And this is something that has to be done at wahakada. So, a condition of the prayer is that it has to be time to pray. You can't pray before it's time to pray. You cannot pray before it is time to pray. إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَنْقُوتًا. Prayer, Jibreel alayhi salam, he taught Muhammad sallam how to pray. He came to him the first day, the second day, and he taught him when to pray on time. Everybody understand this?
Yeah.
Allah says that the prayer is prescribed upon the believers in fixed times. So you cannot pray before or after it's time to pray. Well, unless you have an excuse. So with that being said, you praying in a certain time as a condition of the prayer. It is not an act of the prayer. It is not an integral part of the structure of the prayer. It has something to do with a prerequisite of the prayer. Something has to be done and fulfilled before actual prayer. Like making a building. You have to have a permit. You have to have this type of zoning before you pick up a piece of plywood and a hammer and a screw gun. Having a permit has nothing to do with what? The building. But it's a requirement before the building. And it must also continue while you're making it until you're done. Everybody clear on this? As far as the rukn, a pillar of the prayer, then it is something that must be done, just like a prerequisite. But the difference between a rukn, a pillar, and a shart, the prerequisite, is that the rukn is an actual part of the prayer. So a part of the building is this beam. It is something that is needed, if not the roof will collapse. But the difference between the zoning permit is that the beam is actually a part of the actual building. And if there's no beam, then there's no building. Forgetfully, intentionally, roof is going to collapse. And then we have that which is a wajib, a mandatory act of the prayer, not before the prayer. The similarity or the parallel consistency between the wajib and the rukn is that they're both a part of the prayer. They're both mandatory in the prayer, but one thing the prayer cannot exist without, and one thing the prayer can exist without, such as the beam and the roof collapsing, and such as heat. We can have a building that's erect, that's standing up, and there's no heat inside. But in New York City, in January, it's mandatory to have what? Heat. But the building will survive without the heat. But the beam and the roof collapsing, the building will not what?
Survive.
Everybody clear on this? So it's something that you can fix later on. You didn't install the heat. Walaikum salam. But if you miss the beam and the people sit down and the roof collapses on them, you can't what? Go back and what? Fix that. So the wajib and the salah is something that you have to do, something that's a part of the prayer, but something that can be fixed if you forget it unintentionally. That's the difference between a wajib and a rukn. As far as the recommended acts of the prayer, then that's clear. Something that you don't have to do, the prayer is valid with or without. Such as carpet in the masjid. The masjid doesn't need carpet. But it perhaps is preferred for the Muslims to be comfortable. But it's not an absolute necessary staple of a building. وَهَكَذَا. And then we have nullifiers of the prayer. Things in which you do, your prayer will be null and void. Things that which you have in your building will be null and void. And it is obviously outside of the body of the building as well. Everybody clear on this? So that's in brief with the nice subhanahu wa ta'ala with regards to the differences between a shart, between a rukn, between a wajib, between a sunnah, between a mubtil, and between the makruhat, things which are disliked in the prayer. I hope that these words are clear. Bidnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, to my dear brother, Lutfi, Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Anything we said that was good and positive was only from Allah and His grace. And anything that we said that was incorrect or negative was from my ignorance and shaitan. And Allah Azza wa Jalla and His Messenger and His Deen are totally free therefrom. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Wa alaikum salam. How are you, akhi? Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah. Barakallahu feek. Thank you, Sheikh. Shukran.
Forgive me, man. All right?
No, for what?
No, all right.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters online. Please refrain and ignore from posting in the group chat. The brothers who have came and want to share their comments on the group chat, please refrain from this. And the people who have questions here, if you want, the next question and answer session is going to be on Thursday, inshallah. You can come on Thursday night after Salat al-Isha, which is around 7 o'clock. For all the non-Muslims there that might be online, you guys can come and we will gladly answer all your questions. Bi-idhnillah. If you wanted to, you can come to the masjid. You're invited. You can come to 109 in Vanwyck. The masjid is there. You can come there live and ask questions. If you have any questions about Islam, Christianity, or whatever you have questions on, you can come there, or you can join us live and ask your questions. But please do not disrespect the chat room, or else you will be blocked and you will be banned. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah guide you.